Hardcore Osomatsu fans know the legal trouble of Osomatsu-san's first season and long delay of the English dub. But do you know how the series in the West is connected to the Beatles, Godzilla, and the Sega Genesis? We'll be exploring that and more, plus debunking a myth you probably didn't even know existed as we put the spotlight on Osomatsu-kun and Osomatsu-san. But first, what the heck is an Osomatsu and why should you care? Osomatsu-kun is a gag manga by Fujio Akatsuka that made its debut on April 15, 1962 in Weekly Shonen Sunday. Yes, Shonen Sunday is that old. The manga tells the stories of 6 identical brothers that get up to mischief, from mixing up their identities to pranking this deceitful Francophile named Iami. However, Iami had the last laugh, as the silly sextuplets gradually took a backseat to him and another character named Chibita. In fact, when the manga received a new publication in Shonen King in 1971, Iami continued his reign as the main character, kind of like how Strong Bad overtook the Homestar Runner web series. Is that reference too far back for my audience? God, I'm getting old. Osomatsu-kun's popularity led to it getting its Showa-era anime in 1966 and anime in 1988, with the boys regaining their main character status for one final manga run the year prior. And then, of course, there's the reason most of you probably know this series even exists at all. Osomatsu-san. I'm sure you're all expecting me to jump straight to Osomatsu-san as that was the first official material released in English, right? Sweet summer child. This must be your first time watching one of my videos, because that's not how we roll. We're going way back to see just how early this series came into the English-speaking pop culture space. But before we begin, a couple things. First, please leave in the comments who your best boy is and why it's Jushimatsu. I kid, that's my best boy. But for real, let me know who yours is and why. And second, this episode was chosen by my audience to commemorate voice actor Billy Kametz, the voice actor of Osomatsu in Osomatsu-san, who passed away from colon cancer in 2022. Rest in peace, Billy. Without further ado, let's jump back in time and see when this series first made its presence in the West. Our story begins in China during the Eastern Han era when Kowloon invented the earliest form of paper as we know it today. Whoops, that's too far back. Our story begins in the 1960s in something I like to call the SHEEH invasion. Osomatsu-kun was super popular in Japan when it was being published back then. Come 1964, one of the most popular gags in the series was Iami striking a shocked pose and shouting, "SHEEH!" It became a trend among Japanese citizens, so much so that it even made its way westward, and we're going to talk about 2 confirmed cases of this and one that's dubious. Osomatsu-kun was big in Japan during the mid-60s, but there was something else big in Japan and really big around the world at the time: the Beatles. Yes, Beatlemania and the British invasion were in full swing around the time the Matsuno brothers were popular in their home country, and the 2 sensations kind of crossed over. The Beatles came to Japan on tour during the summer of 1966, coincidentally the same year Osomatsu-kun's first anime hit Japanese airwaves. When John Lennon asked what was hip and happening with the Japanese youth, magazine editor Rumi Hoshika informed Lennon of the SHEEH trend. Thus we have this photo taken on July 2nd of Lennon striking the pose. This other picture sees Lennon and Hoshika doing the pose together, with drummer Ringo Starr seeming to think it's pretty far out. According to an account by Hoshika, Starr struck the pose too, although it was never immortalized in a photo like it was for Lennon. With this, Osomatsu-kun has 1 degree of separation from Thomas the Tank Engine. But can we really count this as Osomatsu, his 5 bros, and Iami invading the Western pop culture consciousness? Realistically, how many Beatlemaniacs in 1966 were going to see these photos and know what the pose was from? Surely there is a bigger instance of Iami's shocked stance and or exclamation in the West. Well, let's take 1 step back in time, back to 1965, with another band part of the British invasion. Perhaps some of you watching are familiar with the song Henry VIII I Am. Henry VIII I Am I Am. I apologize to anyone who now has that song stuck in their head. The tune itself is quite old, dating back to the 1910s, but the track really rose to prominence when it was covered by the British band Herman's Hermits. The catchy little song even enjoyed a brief stint as #1 on the Billboard Top 100, dethroning the Rolling Stones' I Can't Get No Satisfaction. How does this relate to the funny Francophiles pose? Well, for better or worse, I can't play the entirety of this catchy song that drove many parents mad in its heyday. heyday, our focus is on the end of the song. Give it a listen. Did you hear that? Most of you listening probably heard a whispered, yeah. Well, that's not entirely the case in Japan. According to the late Japanese musician Eiichi Otaki in one of his books, Herman's Hermits' lead Peter Noon found Iami's gag so funny when he went to Japan that he decided to incorporate it into his own music. So allegedly, that's not a yeah you're hearing, it's a quiet share. Of course, this rumor is virtually unknown in the West. So that leads us to ask, is Otaki correct? Did Noon really decide to stealthily throw the Shea gag into Henry VIII I Am of all things? I had to know the answer, so I did what any sane person would do and contacted Peter Noon directly to ask this. I didn't know he was still performing, let alone still alive. Now, I've contacted a lot of voice actors, directors, translators, and more this year with zero luck, so I figured my message to him would be lost to the void since Peter Noon is such a famous musician. He actually f***ing responded. Of all the people to respond to my messages, it was the singer of Henry VIII I Am, and Noon himself confirmed that Otaki's claim is a load of bollocks. Quote, I sang yeah with good reason. It was done in one take, unquote. So there you have it. A myth you never knew existed has been busted. Then what's the last piece of pop culture I plan to cover that is actually confirmed to have the Shea pose? Well, Iami's pose found itself performed by the most famous kaiju of them all, Big G himself. No, not that Big G. We've talked about him plenty on this channel. There he is, the king of the monsters, Godzilla. The same year Henry VIII I Am was topping charts stateside, Godzilla was on the silver screen in Japan in The Giant Monster War. When this Godzilla movie went abroad for English speakers beginning in 1970, the film went by many other titles, including Invasion of Astro Monster, Invasion of the Astro Monsters, Invasion of the Astros, Monster Zero, and Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. Contentious titles aside, long story short, humans send Godzilla and Rodan from Earth to Planet X to save the aliens that live there by defeating King Ghidorah, aka Monster Zero. In exchange for the help of the two kaiju, the aliens promise to give Earth a cure for cancer, or in the English dub it's upgraded to a cure for all diseases. To emphasize how big the Shea pose was at the time, after Godzilla defeats King Ghidorah, the King of the Monsters celebrates by striking the Shea pose several times in quick succession. The pose can also be seen in promotional material for the movie. As for American release promo material, Godzilla can be seen doing the Shea pose in the Showa-era Criterion collection released in 2019, illustrated by Benjamin Mara. Of course, close to nobody watching this movie in the West back in the 70s would know this Japanese pop culture reference and likely chalked it up to just being a funny moment, which, to be fair, it was. There are other instances of this pose being present in Japanese pop culture, but these are some of the most prominent, or allegedly prominent, that I could find that made it westward. So while Osomatsu-kun did see some of its influence hit the West, it wasn't until later that it would start being known by name. It's finally time for Osomatsu-san, right? Nope, not yet. Because the early 90s was when a niche group of English speakers would start to know Osomatsu-kun by name, but not in a good way. The Sega Mega Drive launched in Japan on October 29, 1988, and made its way to North America on August 14, 1989, where it was rechristened the Sega Genesis, and in PAL regions a little over a year later where it kept its Japanese name. Around this time, the internet began to see early usage by consumers, and for this section, we'll be focusing on consumers on Usenet newsgroups. Early adopters of the Sega Genesis/Mega Drive talked amongst themselves about importing games from Asia in a pre-Sonic the Hedgehog era of Sega. And what do you know, one of the earliest games released on the console was Osomatsu-kun Nonsense Theater on December 24th, 1988. So that's cool, people in the West were talking about the Matsunos, even if it was in a niche community. Well, that would be cool if it wasn't for the fact the game sucks ass. According to threads on rec.games.video, the Osomatsu-kun game is a quote-unquote Wonder Boyish or quote-unquote Alex Kidd type game that was ranked as the worst game on the console according to a poll run by magazine Beep Mega Drive. In other words, this was an import to avoid like the plague, although one user called it quote-unquote quite fun. Alright, it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for. About 2.5 decades after Osomatsu-kun's Genesis infamy, the franchise finally entered the Western anime community's consciousness in 2015 with the release of Osomatsu-san. Osomatsu-san is the AU sequel where the boys are all grown up as deadbeat loser virgin neets. The show was made to commemorate the would-be 80th birthday of its author, Fujio Akatsuka. Osomatsu himself said as much in episode 1, which many of you have likely never seen, but more on that later. Really, episode 1 sets up the tone of the series well. The characters are self-aware, the humor is cruder and more absurd than its earlier iterations, and the sextuplets are no longer completely identical. Each one now has a more distinct look and personality than their manga counterparts, and they're all weird in their own unique way. When this anime came out in the Western market, it was rechristened Mr. Osomatsu per the Japanese team. However, no fans stateside call it that, kind of a reverse of how nobody calls Mr. Pibb Pibb Extra. So I'll be referring to the anime as Osomatsu-san. Osomatsu-san launched as a simulcast on Crunchyroll on October 6, 2015, meaning it aired the same day as Japan with English subtitles as part of that year's fall anime lineup. The English translation was provided by Michelle Timon, who has a lengthy resume of translations for the streaming service. Episodes dropped every Monday at 1:45 Eastern Time and 10:45 AM Pacific Time worldwide outside of Asia. The season ran for a second cour in the winter of 2016 as well, with the season ending with 25 episodes in all, plus a bonus episode 3.5, plus a special. The Matsuno sextuplets had stiff competition that season, as they were up against the likes of One Punch Man, Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, and Haikyuu second season. Hey wait, the anime lineup of fall 2015, why does that sound oddly familiar? Deja vu aside, for a legacy property to do well in the West well after its creation, it needs to really stand out. So what happened to Osomatsu-san? Was it a smash hit that stood up to Saitama, or did anime watchers skip it? Shockingly, it wasn't just a hit, it was one of the biggest anime that season in the East and West. How did Osomatsu-san, an anime based on a series that launched in the early 60s, defy all odds and become such a success? It's difficult to pin down one specific aspect. There's the unique brand of comedy, the distinct art style, the show's 6 unique brothers that kind of have something for everyone. It was kind of a perfect blend of things in a perfect situation. It became the dark horse hit of the season. But perhaps one reason people know it so well is the legal trouble it ran into. The show landed itself in hot water on episode 1. Yes, ooh, the forbidden episode. The episode starts with the boys animated in the style of their Showa-era anime learning they're making a comeback. In this moment, they realize their old slapstick Showa-era gags aren't gonna cut it in a modern anime landscape, so they decide to take a different approach. Tackle every trend out there, starting with a male idol plotline before devolving into an unholy amalgamation of different genres. The problems began when the plot went a bit too off the rails and traveled well into the danger zone. The show suddenly threw in rapid-fire copyright-infringing references to the likes of Haikyuu, Yowamusha Pedal, Love Live, Attack on Titan, Naruto, Sailor Moon, Pokemon, and several others. Now in the West, this would be fine. For God's sake, we have shows dedicated to this kind of crap like Family Guy and Robot Chicken. But Japan doesn't see parody the same way. Direct parody, the likes of which was seen here, is illegal over there as it disrupts the quote-unquote integrity of the work. Needless to say, the team got a lot of legal complaints. In response to the legal backlash of episode 1, the episode was removed from all platforms and never released on home video. According to Crunchyroll's website, users' last chance to see the episode on the site was November 15th, 2015. But Crunchyroll announced late at night on November 10th that episode 1 would be removed from streaming services at 7 AM Pacific the following day, 9 hours after the surprise announcement. This announcement was right after Osomatsu-san got in trouble for a different episode, this one being episode 3. In a few vignettes that episode, the chubby inventor Dekapon was shown as Dekaponmon, a parody of children's superhero Anpanmon. Hey, been a while since we last brought up that name. Complete with Dekaponmon having red cheeks, a red cape, and a red nose like the titular hero, scenery greatly resembling the setting of the show, and even a parody of Anpanmon's title card. What made the situation even worse for the team was that their little Decaponmon parody even recreated Anpanmon feeding those in need by pulling off a piece of his Anpan head. Decaponmon's version of this is reaching into his pants, as Decapon is known to do, on 2 separate occasions. On the first, he squatted down, let out a grunt, and reached into his drawers to pull out a long, brown cutting tool, which is a type of fried breadstick. Oh my god. In the second instance, the buck-toothed baldy pulled out a golden ball. That's not as bad as an implied stick of poo-poo, right? Well, it's not, until you realize gold balls is Japanese slang for testicles. This is a joke you may have seen in other shows like, oh my god, there I go again, bringing up One Piece. Obviously, these jokes are extremely crude for a kid-friendly show like Anpanmon. Going back to my earlier note on parody law in Japan, these pants gags were viewed as violating the integrity of the original property. This Anpanmon parody was seen as so offensive that the head of TV Tokyo had to publicly apologize for it at a press conference. The team quickly worked to make enough paint edits to make the Anpanmon license holders happy, changing Decaponmon's red cheeks and nose to their regular colors, his cape color to blue, the conspicuous items from his pants to less crude options, and the title card and Anpanmon-inspired scenery to generic options. These changes were reflected in the episode's satellite broadcast. So what does this all mean for the West? Well, while the West briefly got to experience this not-so-kid-friendly parody on streaming, the Decaponmon vignettes were later removed on home video and streaming in all territories, which explains why episode 3 is almost 4 minutes shorter than the other episodes. Womp womp. In that same episode, the team also altered another vignette's title card from being too blatant of a Saw parody, maybe just to be safe since they were in deep enough shit as it was. Well, so after those legal nightmares, it was smooth sailing for Osomatsu-san. Every episode afterwards aired without a hitch. As mentioned before, the show was a tremendous success in the East and West, with fans and critics lauding the show and being amazed this show that seemed like it would be lost in the tides of a list of expected hits would be a standout of the season. The humor, the characters, the writing, the whole package just hit right with folks. The major dividing factor in reviews was how the season ended. The penultimate episode sets up a rather dramatic story beat of the brothers going their separate ways, but immediately discards it in the final episode via comedically contrived means. This joke did not land well with everyone, so it was hit and miss on people's enjoyment of their subversion of expectations. With how big this turned out to be, surely there would be a second season, right? Well, yes, but in between the end of Season 1 and the announcement of Season 2, the West was blessed with some goodies. The aforementioned Episode 3.5 was available on the first home video release in Japan to replace Episode 1, but Crunchyroll made it available as a surprise drop on August 4th, 2016, finally making it available legally for English speakers. But that's not all. On December 7th, 2016, Madman Entertainment released a sub-only DVD of Osomatsu-san in Australia, which got slapped with an M rating for crude humor, nudity, sexual references, animated violence, and coarse language. Aussies got to enjoy this crude show on home media ahead of any other English-speaking region. Pause for a sec. This is really late post-edit, but I found this nifty Osomatsu-san Tokyo guide in English that was released on August 10th, 2016. It's exactly what it says on the tin, an English language guide on stuff to do in Tokyo. The physical version came with stickers too. Just a neat little extra thing I found. Unpause. After being a runaway success in 2015, Avex Pictures confirmed a second season on April 6, 2017, with a release month of October confirmed 2 months later. Sure enough, the Matsuno sextuplets came back for another round of animated shenanigans for the fall of 2017, debuting on October 2nd. Wait a second. A comedy anime with a second season announced in April of 2017 and released in October for the fall season? Where have I heard that before? Okay, double deja vu aside, we've got one more thing to cover before we jump into Season 2. With Osomatsu-san being so popular, an English dub seemed like a no-brainer. Yes, it's finally time to talk about the English dub. I'm 8 pages into the script, and I'm sure anyone that's watched the video for this long has been dying to hear me talk about this. And for good reason. It's a complicated story. On August 11th, 2017, at the anime convention Otakon in Washington, D.C., Viz Media announced they had obtained the rights for Osomatsu-san Season 1 and the then-upcoming Season 2, announcing the home video rights for both seasons and the Season 2 simulcast rights. A dub announcement seemed all but imminent, and soon after, Viz confirmed a dub was in the works in a reply to a now-deleted tweet. The hype was through the roof at the prospect of an English dub. People were throwing in voice actor requests for their best boys. Robbie Daymond himself saying on Twitter he'd, quote, fight any anime best boy to be in this show, unquote. Ray Chase followed up Daymond's tweet asking Viz, quote, please send auditions, unquote. And of course, who else but Max Mittelman rounded off the trio of loud, annoying, and very annoying by also asking to be in the show, calling himself the Danny DeVito to Ray Chase's Arnold Schwarzenegger. While the hype for a dub was real, so was the sense of nervousness. An Osomatsu-san dub could be great, but it could also be, let's not mince words, utter dog shit. The English cast, whoever they would end up being, had lofty expectations to live up to from the fanbase, especially because the boys were all played by high-profile Japanese voice actors. However, fans would need to wait for further news about the dub. As an aside, the day before the dub was announced, there was an English release of the Osomatsu-kun manga. Finally, an official release of the Kun era material in English, but not in a way one would expect. It was released as a bilingual English and Japanese manga, only in Japan, of course. Anyways, back to yakking about Osomatsu-san. Even though Viz had the rights to Osomatsu Season 2 and planned to simulcast it on Viz.com back when that was a streaming service, Crunchyroll would still host a simulcast of the show as well. Michelle Timon once again provided the English translation for Osomatsu-san on Crunchyroll. Viz posted an article on October 5th, 2017, only days after Season 2's premiere, giving readers a primer about Osomatsu-san. At the very bottom of the article, in the last paragraph, Viz confirmed not only the English dub of Season 1, but also of Season 2. No further details were shared at the time, but fans were abuzz online wondering who would voice the brothers in English. Until further announcements for the dub, fans could enjoy the simulcast of Season 2. I'm sure this will come as a shock to absolutely none of you, but Season 2 was an instant success in both hemispheres. The absurd, crude humor was just as fresh as it was in Season 1, and the show once again ran for 2 cours. Cours? What's the plural? Meh, who cares? Giving the brothers 25 brand spanking new episodes and concluding on March 27th, 2018. During Osomatsu-san's second reign at the top, Florida-based company Discotek Media acquired the rights to the 1988 Osomatsu-kun anime and posted the first episode for free on YouTube on January 13th, 2018 with English subs. Unlike Osomatsu-san, which received an updated name for the West, Osomatsu-kun kept its original Japanese title, so no like Lil Osomatsu or something. Discotek used this video to gauge interest in a Western release of anime, and with over 800k views as of writing, I think the people were just a little bit interested to see the brothers as kids. It would be a bit though before the full series would be subbed. With a dub of both seasons of Osomatsu-san on the horizon and a subbed release of Osomatsu-kun anime looking likely, things were pretty exciting in the Western fandom. Almost a full year after announcing the dub of both seasons, Viz finally spilled the beans on the Osomatsu-san English dub during their industry panel at Anime Weekend Atlanta on September 22nd, 2018, complete with a snazzy announcement image. The dub would be recorded at Studiopolis in Studio City, Los Angeles, California. Voice actor profile time. Billy Kametz would be playing the titular Osomatsu. Kametz shared a few roles with his Japanese counterpart Takahiro Sakurai, Mikhail in Sirius the Jaeger, and Luther in Phantasy Star Online 2. Next in line, Ray Chase got his wish and would be in Osomatsu-san, cast as the cool Karamatsu. Chase stated in an interview with Viz.com that when auditions opened for the show, quote, "My heart was always set on Karamatsu," unquote. Chase shares multiple roles with Karamatsu's Japanese via Yuichi Nakamura, as they both play Bruno Bucciarati in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind, Ryu Sanada in Kimi ni Todoke, and Professor Cerise/Sakuragi in Pokemon Journeys. Chase has gone on the record in a Reddit AMA saying he is a quote-unquote big fan of Nakamura, additionally noting, quote, "He makes me laugh a lot with Karamatsu," unquote. The third brother in line now, Chris Niozzi, aka Kerbifer, was set to play the idol fanboy Choromatsu.
Actually, Choromatsu in the dub was played by...
Shh. We'll get to that. Fourth up, we've got Kyle McCarley chosen as the voice of the perpetually depressed Ichimatsu. Fifth on our list is Michael Sinterniklaas as the excessively happy brother Jushimatsu, best boy. According to localization director David Kasipit, Jushimatsu was the hardest of the 6 brothers to cast, as it's a unique role set up by the ever-talented Daisuke Ono. Jamie Simone from Studiopolis pitched Michael Sinterniklaas as a possible candidate, and Kasipit had this to say about Sinterniklaas' performance. Quote, Michael's voice is very different to Mr. Ono's, but what sealed the deal for me was how he immediately understood the nature of the character. His performance is like a goofball, super friendly Labrador retriever who got hit by a car one too many times, which totally fits Jushimatsu. Or is that just me? Unquote. And last on our list is Max Mittelman getting his wish to be in the show as well as the flirty brother Toromatsu. Mittelman also shares the role of Mob's brother Ritsu Kageyama in Mob Psycho 100 with his Japanese counterpart Miyu Irino. Oh, what's this? We've got a special video message from Mittelman himself.
What's up? It's Max Mittelman, the voice of Todomatsu from Mr. Osomatsu. Hope you're doing well. We're at Otakon 2024, and we're having a great time. And I just wanted to come on here and say what's up to Yui Haruhara. Did I say that right? Yui Haruhara. I hope everybody's watching, and I hope you're enjoying the channel. Boom! Later. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Max, for the video shout-out. And the ADR director and scriptwriter for this bunch of boys would be Patrick Seitz. Many watching may know him primarily as a voice actor with roles like Frankie and Scorpion, but he's an accomplished voice director too, one of his most recent projects being Super Mario Bros. Wonder on the Switch. And almost as if it was planned, it was, 5 out of the 6 brothers' English voice actors were guests at Anime Weekend Atlanta that weekend and were at the Viz panel for the announcement. The only one not there was Mittelman. Excitement quickly built after the announcement of the dub. But then, radio silence. Weeks turned to months, turned to years. The silence lasted for so long that Osomatsu-san got even more content in the interim, starting with the Osomatsu-san movie, which debuted in Japan on March 15th, 2019, and got a subbed streaming release stateside on Crunchyroll November 8th that same year. Crunchyroll added the prologue theater short soon after, hitting the site on December 24th with English subs. The same month that the Osomatsu-san movie launched in Japan, the brothers' younger incarnations got yet another quote-unquote best of bilingual manga in Japan, using the same format as the earlier bilingual manga release. This release, once again, never left its home country of Japan. That's a lot of Osomatsu love in English, and it doesn't stop there. Remember when Discotek Media dropped that random subbed episode of the 80s Osomatsu-kun anime to YouTube? Well, the entire show was finally posted with English subs on Crunchyroll on May 22nd, 2019. The show would later join the Retro Crush catalog in 2020. As of recording, the original 1966 anime has never been officially released in English, although it was mistakenly reported as such back when Retro Crush first got the rights. Unsurprisingly, Osomatsu-san got a 3rd season. Unsurprisingly, the 3rd season was simulcast on Crunchyroll with English subtitles. And unsurprisingly, the English subtitles were done by Michelle Timon. The season debuted on October 12th, 2020 for the fall anime lineup, and would once again run for 2 cours. So Osomatsu and his 5 brothers were the talk of the anime scene like before, right? Well, the Matsuno brothers actually did have stiff competition that season, one of the biggest competitors being then newcomer Jujutsu Kaisen. This action shonen anime quickly became one of, if not the most talked about series on both sides of the globe in the fall of 2020. Osomatsu-san still had its fans, of course, but it didn't have that same impact as its prior 2 seasons in its first cours. 2020 was turning to 2021 as Osomatsu-san Season 3's first cours was ending. Then, it finally happened. On December 23rd, 2020, Viz Media finally announced the release date for Osomatsu-san Season 1 on Blu-ray in North America, with a formal listing going up on Right Stuf soon after. Yes, after 2+ years of "stay tuned, we promise it's coming," the Blu-ray set had a release date of March 9th, 2021, not long before Season 3 in Japan was set to end. As expected, the Right Stuf listing noted the American home video release would not include the quote-unquote controversial Episode 1. which made it sound way worse than it actually is. That doesn't mean the dub team didn't try to make it happen though. When asked if there was any chance of dubbing this forbidden episode, Max Mittelman and Ray Chase both on separate occasions enthusiastically confirmed they tried to make it happen. Mittelman and Chase remarked they quote-unquote begged to dub episode 1, and Viz Media wanted to make it happen too. As one would expect, the omission all came down to licensing. Soon after the announcement of the Blu-ray, it was revealed the previously announced ADR director and scriptwriter Patrick Seitz was too busy directing the video game Fire Emblem Three Houses to commit to finishing Osomatsu-san. In 2019, Seitz handed the reins for the Osomatsu-san dub to Chris Bevins, who would take over both roles Seitz filled. Seitz's direction was kept for episodes 2 through 5, but the rest was all Bevins. Further dub info seemed inevitable, and to fans' delight, Viz confirmed more details about the English cast on February 16th, 2021 via Twitter. Let's start by addressing the elephant in the room. Those of you who have seen this dub may have been surprised when I said Chris Nyosi was set to play Choromatsu. Well, I wasn't lying. He was. Keyword was. The thing is, Nyosi found himself in a heap of trouble in 2019. If you're curious, you can look it up yourself, but be aware the subject matter is sensitive. This news led to Nyosi being recast on multiple projects, one of the biggest being, coincidentally we're circling back to this already, male Byleth in Fire Emblem Three Houses and the mobile game Fire Emblem Heroes, a role for which he was also found to have broken NDA and shared the news ahead of time. Nyosi was also recast as Choromatsu in the Osomatsu-san dub, to the relief of fans of the show and especially fans of the character. While it would have been kind of funny if Zach Aguilar was the new voice of Choromatsu as he replaced Nyosi as male Byleth, that honor would go to Sean Chiplock. Chiplock's tweet announcing the recast suggests that this decision was made a while ago, and he'd been patiently following his NDA like a good boy. Unlike Nyosi, who didn't share any roles with Choromatsu's Japanese voice actor Hiroshi Kamiya, Chiplock has two shared roles with the Japanese VA, Roland in Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, and Belphomet in Shadowverse. All other Matsuno brothers kept their previously announced English voice actors. Viz further announced the voice cast for side characters. We'll cover a few more as well. Not only would Ray Chase be playing the cool boy Karamatsu, but he'd also be the voice of the eccentric adventurer and previous center of legal controversy, Dekapon. Alejandra E. Cazares, aka Alex Cazares, was set to be the voice of Chibita for this dub. Jeremy Lee was on the cast list as the flag-wearing Hatabo. Cassandra Lee Morris was cast as the voice of the boys' love interest Totoko. Now one might look at this voice actor profile and think it looks awfully familiar, as Totoko bears a striking resemblance to Shizuka, aka Sue, from Doraemon. However, based on Morris's response to someone pointing this out on Twitter, this appears to be a coincidence. The context of Morris also being the voice of Sue makes the Godmatsu vignette funnier though, because Johnny Young Bosch, who plays Nobita, aka Nobi in Doraemon, was the voice of one-time character Godmatsu, the quote-unquote good version of the brothers that ended up wooing Totoko that episode. Anyways, while Morris and Totoko's Japanese actor Aya Endo have both voiced Chihiro Fushimi from Persona 3, they played her in different iterations of the series. Keith Silverstein found himself playing a triad of name characters, the conniving Iami, the dopey Daion, and the sextuplets' father Matsuzo Matsuno. Silverstein can also be heard as other one-off characters like Chainsaw in the Saw parody or Barack Obama. This wouldn't be Silverstein's first time sharing a role with the love-to-hate Iami's Japanese actor Kenichi Suzumura, as both have played the vampire hunter Simon Belmont in specifically Castlevania Judgment on the Wii, although Silverstein has played Simon in far more iterations of the character. As for Daion's voice actor Nobuo Tobita, Silverstein shares the role of Lasker Alessi in Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans. And lastly, we've got, oh my god, Mick Wingert as the boys' mother Matsuyo Matsuno. I love saying these names. Obviously, this is remarkably different from the Japanese version in which Mrs. Matsuno is voiced by iconic voice actress Kujira. But it ultimately doesn't matter too much, as the voice Wingert used for the character is hilarious. Others on the cast included Tara Sands, Rachel Robinson, and Brianna Knickerbocker. Unfortunately for the last Link of Lava, Robbie Damon didn't make the cut for the dub of Osomatsu-san. Damon facetiously said in an interview at Anime Boston 2022 with Anime Herald, quote, I went to the anime doctor and he said I wasn't funny enough to be a Matsuno brother. I took that diagnosis and stopped trying to be funny in anime ever." Unquote. As fans waited for the Blu-ray to drop on March 9th, they could look forward to the rest of Season 3 simulcast. Oh, speaking of, how did Season 3 fare amidst other anime in the winter 2021 lineup? Osomatsu-san had a tough time matching the might of JJK, but surely nothing could overshadow it that winter. Okay, never mind. Well, anyways, fast forward to March 2021. Season 3 was ending, and Season 1 was about to launch on home video and video on demand stateside. Well, the VOD version dropped 6 days early, meaning fans could watch the hilarity of Osomatsu-san's dub ahead of time. Wait, hilarity. I'm going too far ahead. We've only talked about the voice cast and a few extra notes so far. A solid cast is only one element of production. What about the scripts? An Osomatsu-san dub was bound to be a struggle. Sure, a lot of the show is funny on its own without needing to adapt too much, but this is a situation with which we're all too familiar if you've been following my channel for a long time or you've binged all my videos. Osomatsu-san is a comedy anime that has a lot of specific quirks beyond penis and butt jokes that make it funny, such as Japanese idiosyncrasies and pop culture references and specific character traits that may not transfer well to a dub. Add on the fact that again, the original Japanese voice cast is made of notable names that absolutely killed it in their performances, and it's what fans were used to. The dub had a lot to live up to. The subs managed to convey a good amount of the humor in its dialogue, which of course landed well with English-speaking fans. But what about the dub? Localization director David Kasipit brought up his concerns about making the humor work in English with the Japanese production committee, noting that the dub team may need to make a lot of alterations. The committee gave their blessing to the localization team to do what needed to be done. The scripts were a group effort between Kasipit, the actors, the director, and the ADR writers. The team took lines they liked from the subs, Kasipit said they straight up stole what they thought was funny from the subs, and then collaborated on adapting the rest. So that means they must have dumbed it down to make it palpable, right? Hell no, they made it naughtier. This dub is raunchy. The dub team took the crudeness of the original version and upped it by like 10 or 20%, adding more dirty jokes and swear words. Per Kasipit in an interview with Bubble Blabber, quote, "We want to stay true to the original, but if we're not laughing hard, we need to polish until we are," unquote. It's not like the dub of Ghost Stories where the original content of that anime was not comedic and crude. A fairer comparison would be to the dub of Panty and Stocking, where the show was already extremely crude and the dub just cranked up that crudeness dial even higher. A great illustration of this for Osomatsu-san is in the first episode, or I guess the second episode, where Choromatsu goes to an idol handshake event and Osomatsu finds him there, much to Choromatsu's chagrin. When Choromatsu arrives at the front of the line to meet the idol Nya-chan, he finds Osomatsu there stealing his handshake and, trying to help Choromatsu get laid. In the Japanese version, Osomatsu keeps saying sex in front of the idol, and it's censored. But in the English version, he keeps saying a hearty, uncensored f***. Well, f***. I guess I have to censor f***. But in the dub, it's totally uncensored. Okay, I can't keep this gag going. I've sworn a lot in this video. YouTube's gonna get mad and demonetize this video. YouTube, please have mercy. The convo keeps going, and yeah, in Japanese, Osomatsu keeps saying naughty words and phrases and they're censored, but in the English dub, he keeps asking inappropriate questions, uncensored, to the traumatized idol. So yeah, that's kind of the nature of the dub. Keep it true to the original, but make it dirtier. So like, an instance of guts in the dialogue was changed to big dick energy. But anyways, when it came to recording, each line in the script had a quote-unquote main line and then a few alternate choices. According to Billy Kametz, there were usually 2 alts per line. Kametz noted Osomatsu-san was a difficult show to record because all the lines were funny, even the alts. He'd get halfway through recording a line and then start laughing hysterically. And the same thing would happen for all the alt lines too. According to him, quote, "I believe the words, 'Wait, do you really want me to say that?' were uttered by me on a few occasions," unquote. While the dub stayed mostly true to the intent of the source material, some of the unique sentence-ending quirks heard in the Japanese version did not make it into the dub. Notable instances include Iyami's Zansu and Hatapo's Jo. But fret not, Iami's SHEEH was kept for the English version, as 1, it's iconic, and 2, it matches the animation. And speaking of Iami, there's another speech quirk of his that wouldn't have had the same impact in an English dub as it does in Japanese. His personal pronoun in Japanese was me, like literally the English word. In reference to his faux Frenchman persona, the dub added French words to his dialogue, such as his me pronoun sometimes being changed to moi and having interjections like fantastique. Très bien. Then what did the team do with Karamatsu speaking English in the Japanese version? Did he speak French too? Well, the dub team didn't give Karamatsu any French lessons, unless you count his potty mouth, and instead Chase was directed to, quote, pour on the painful smarminess in his performances, unquote. Some jokes were changed outright as they don't make sense in English. One such example is when Hatobo turns out to be filthy rich and somehow is in direct contact with Obama. It's questioned in the Japanese version how Hatobo knows English, but since that wouldn't make sense in, well, the English dub, it was changed to asking how Hatobo knows Obama. Okay, hold on. Let's talk about this for a second. The dub took so long to come out that this presidential cameo was 2 presidencies ago. In any case, other types of jokes that were removed involve stuff like Japanese shows or celebrities not well known in the West. Other pop culture references were changed to something that would make sense for Westerners, like a reference to the Japanese rock band Complex being changed to a reference to Johnny Cash. Unfortunately, there were a few jokes or vignettes that were simply impossible to make funny. Ray Chase specifically cited the Mahjong vignette in the Anime Boston interview, which he called quote-unquote horrible from the standpoint of, in his words, quote, there's just nothing you can do with that. It's just going to be a lot of Mahjong jokes, unquote. So I've gone on and on about the dub. So with all these changes, is it good or is it cringe? What can I say? The final product is hilarious. I wish I could go into each and every little thing that's changed between the subs and the dub, because there are some dub exclusive jokes that are really, really good. Like meta jokes you could only make in an English dub but fit the tone of the show.
Why does this place look like Hatobo's a bazillionaire? What the hell does he do? Is he a movie star? Pro athlete? Anime translator?
Kasipin himself claimed the dub was well received with fans. Quote, I've seen a lot of the show's fans, who presumably watched only the subs for years, say online that the dub's humor gave them a way to re-enjoy the show. The changes we made seem to have hit just the right note. We didn't go off and completely do our own thing, but we did punch it up with our own humor enough to make it feel fresh again. Unquote. Season 2's dub would come to Blu-ray on September 14th, 2021, only 6 months after Season 1's Blu-ray debut. Talk about a quick turnaround time. Osomatsu-san fans were eating good in 2021. Sure enough, second verse same as the first, the dub's second season followed the same principles and did well with fans. In fact, I'd argue Season 2 was even better since the actors had time to grow into their characters, and the rest of the staff better got into the depraved heads of these characters too.
It's like a freaking Tarantino movie in here.
Despite the challenging task at hand, the Osomatsu-san dub received nigh universal praise. The dub stands on its own merits with its humor and style, which made it successful with viewers. However, as of now, Viz Media has not licensed Osomatsu-san's third outing or movie for a home video and or dubbed release. So currently only seasons 1 and 2 are available with English audio. There has been additional Osomatsu content since the dub concluded. Osomatsu-san has received 3 new movies, 2 from 2022 and 1 from 2023, none of which have seen an official English subbed release yet in the West. While 3 movies coming out is well and good, as of now, there is no season 4. Nope, never mind. What an unusual story. Unlike so many legacy anime/manga franchises that show up on a big platform in the English-speaking world years after they launched in Japan, then proceed to fail or, at best, get a super niche audience, the Osomatsu-kun franchise defied the odds and came out on top. The 2015 anime had ideal conditions that helped make its mark and strike the funny bones of many English speakers. Even with legal troubles in its first few episodes, or perhaps partially because of them, Osomatsu-san rocketed to the top. and while it's not as big as it used to be, it's still popular to this day and will likely see a resurgence in popularity with its 4th season on the way, which was announced during production of this video, of course. The dub is a staple of the fanbase, even if it is only the first 2 seasons as of now. Of course, most fans understandably prefer the Japanese version, but the dub being so unhinged and different enough from the Japanese version makes it worth watching too. There's no telling if or when Viz or another company will license Osomatsu-san Season 3 for Blu-ray and or a VOD release, or if they'll even dub it. It's a shame too, because I want to see how the dub would handle the vignette of the boys meeting their voice actors. If a company does move forward with a dub though, sadly, they'll need to recast another brother. As I stated near the start of the video, this video was made in memory of Billy Kametz, the voice of Osomatsu. Kametz tragically passed away on June 9th, 2022 from colon cancer. He was 35 years old at the time of his passing. Much, much too soon. I chose to do a video in Kametz's memory because, to my surprise, I had never shown him in a video before, and I figured if I was gonna show him, it should be for one of his lead roles. The audience spoke, and you all made it known you wanted to hear me talk about Osomatsu. It's clear from all he said about Osomatsu that it was one of his favorite roles, and if a dub of Season 3 happens, Kametz has left big shoes to fill. I encourage viewers to donate to Kametz's memorial page on the Colon Cancer Coalition's website. The link is on screen and in the description. Donations to the Colon Cancer Coalition go towards raising awareness of symptoms and screenings for the deadly disease. If you'd like to check out Osomatsu-san and hear Kametz in his funniest role, the dub of Osomatsu-san Seasons 1 and 2 are available on Blu-ray and many VOD platforms, which also have the Japanese audio with English subs. All 3 current seasons of the show, as well as the movie and a few extra bits with Japanese audio, are available on Crunchyroll with English subtitles. Crunchyroll and Retro Crush host all 86 episodes of the 1988 Osomatsu-kun anime with subs. As stated, as of now, the original 1966 Osomatsu-kun anime is unavailable legally. And speaking of legally, if you want to watch episode 1 of Osomatsu-san Season 1, well, it's not hard to find. Whew, that was a long video. I've got a lot of thank yous and shoutouts to give. Thank you for sticking to the end of such a long video. And as always, thanks to all of my patrons and Twitch subs for supporting my videos, and a special shoutout to the Mass Muchacho tier patron Coops. If you'd like to be listed here, have access to my supporter-only Discord server, and see videos before they come out on YouTube, please consider joining on either platform. Be sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell, share the video, and comment what you think of Osomatsu-san and or Osomatsu-kun, how you discovered the series, and any other topics you'd like to see me cover in the future. Osomatsu-san was a hell of a subject, and this has ballooned into one of my biggest videos yet. So next time we'll do something a bit lighter. Thank you to everyone that voted for Osomatsu in the poll I posted earlier this year. In fact, thank you to everyone that voted on the poll at all. For those that missed the poll, the series was up against Cells at Work, Rising of the Shield Hero, and Promare, all of which had Kametz in a starring role. I learned a lot in researching this video, and I hope you learned something watching it. I didn't expect to get in touch with the singer of Henry VIII I Am, so that was pretty exciting. Also, I had a blast watching Osomatsu-san. What a funny show. I didn't expect the dub to be so out there for its humor. I paused quite a few times from laughing so hard. Also, a special shout out to Max Middleman for agreeing to do that shout out to my channel at Otakon 2024. And since we're on that topic, thank you to all the awesome people I met over my little con marathon in August and early September. It's one thing to see an impressive number like 2,000 subs on a screen, but it's another to meet some of those people face to face. I'm extremely grateful for all of you. But enough mushy junk. I'm sure you're all excited to know what's up next. Let's check it. Hi, so the next few videos are going to be quick ones. In a couple weeks, you can expect a video about a show you all know and love, Crayon Shinchan. I got word from Brian Lacey on more details about the Vitello and Fuse dubs. You are not going to want to miss this video. We'll discuss media that was lost when we discussed it that has since been found either partially or fully, and talk a bit about Pokemon Red and Blue. Oh, and Yui Haruhara will soon be a name of the past, so don't be too shocked when you see a new name, but it's long overdue. As for another episode proper, I've got stuff on the way to close out the year. Check out this video in the meantime. Until next time, take care.